VocalEye Almost Live Zoom. Speak No. Emergency. Hosted by Amy Amantea, with special guest Persimmon Blackbridge.
So I want to give you all a formal big welcome to this VocalEye Almost Live event. My name is Amy Amantea. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Associate Director here at VocalEye. I'm your host for these Almost Live events, and I'm a proud member of the blind community. It's a delight to spend my Wednesdays with you all. I can't believe that we started this space over the pandemic, and it was just supposed to be a pandemic pivot, and here we are this many years later, our own community that we've built. This is like the joy of my week being here. So thank you so much for coming back and spending time with me and each other. Thank you for donations that you send in to support VocalEye. Thank you for testimonial letters that you send in, that we send off to our funders so that they can hopefully fund us to keep this programming going. All of that makes a big difference. So thank you all for the time you spend and the contributions that you make to VocalEye. If folks happen to be watching us on our YouTube channel, you can also get involved with VocalEye. You can write testimonial letters based on what you've seen on our YouTube channel, or if you come to our plays. You can sign up for our newsletter. You can visit our website at vocaleye.ca. There are so many things that you can do to support our work here. Please hit like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. We would greatly appreciate that. Every like and subscribe matters because, well, our funders look at everything to see the value of our programming and what impact we're making on the community. VocalEye is broadcasting to you all from the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, in particular the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. That's colonially known as Vancouver, British Columbia. And so each week I create a land acknowledgement based on some things that I'm interested in learning about truth and reconciliation, about the land that I'm on as a settler person. And I've offered this before, but it's been a while. Why do we do land acknowledgements? Why is that something that I'm offering every week, if people are wondering? So why do we do land acknowledgements? We do land acknowledgements to recognize and to respect the Indigenous peoples who have lived on and cared for these lands long before colonization. It's a way of honoring their history, cultures, and ongoing connections to the land while acknowledging the impacts of colonization, displacement, and systemic oppression. At their best, land acknowledgements are not just words, but commitments to learning, to action, and to meaningful reconciliation. They remind us that the land we stand on has a story far older than the present, and that Indigenous sovereignty and rights are not just historical concerns, but also present and future ones. That said, a land acknowledgement shouldn't be a box to just tick or performance of allyship. It should be an inspiration, a reflection, and a responsibility. We should be asking ourselves, what are we doing beyond the words that we say to support Indigenous communities, to respect their sovereignty, and to contribute to justice? So what is it that we do as a human being if we want to join truth and reconciliation? Are we listening to people? Are we, when we listen, are we not saying, well, that's impossible, like, I don't believe in residential schools? Or are we acknowledging the pain and suffering that colonization had on generations of families? From a land perspective, do we value the land that we're on? Do we take a moment to say, wait a second, what was here before I was here? What did this land look like before there were houses and roads and cars? And who took care of that land? Or stopping to pick up a piece of garbage, or thinking about the impact that our footprint has on the planet, and what we can do to mitigate our own carbon footprint. So there's all sorts of things that we can do as an individual to just honor and take care of the place that we live in from a land perspective, as we take care of the place that we live in our home. So that's what I offer today as my land acknowledgement for settler folks to think about. So big welcome. It's Wednesday, the 19th of February, 2025. And tonight we're offering you our Almost Live event number 173. 173. Just let that sink in for a moment. 173. Um, that's a big number. I love it. Tonight we're offering you a really special, a repeat guest, a returning guest, an artist in the space this evening. So some of you may have seen her work before. Persimmon Blackbridge is joining us. Persimmon has a solo exhibition going on right now at the Richmond Art Gallery and is here providing us with a little bit of a highlight of that exhibition. It's called Speak No Emergency. So I'm going to speak no more and bring Persimmon into the space so that Persimmon gets an opportunity to say hello. Hello, Persimmon. How are you, my friend?
Hello. So good to be here again.
I'm so happy to have you. So, how has your day been? You've had some interesting weather over in your area.
Yes, it's been extremely windy, but we did not lose power in the end, and the wind has calmed down now. So, yay, we made it through another one.
Well, weather is changing vastly, as we know from our friends in California here tonight. That they experienced those forest fires quite devastatingly not so many weeks ago. Kentucky
Yeah,
is, parts of Kentucky is flooded. There's extreme, snowfall that's happening on the sort of the eastern side of Canada and the US. Like the weather is changing in a really big way. So it's not surprising that we are experiencing things that are not what we're used to, I guess. I mean, what else can you say about that?
yeah.
Right?
There's a lot of it, and this project comes from just the daily deluge of like fires and floods and mudslides and um over the last many years it's just been getting more and more intense, and so this project started with looking at the pine beetle epidemic, which is a normal regular seasonal occurrence, but
Mhm.
climate change turned it into a disastrous thing where like there was like mountainside after mountainside of dead pine trees. It was just like so horrendous to drive through it, and on to all the catastrophes that have happened since then, and just dealing with how this is not being treated as the emergency that it is.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, we can't move too fast on this because it'll hurt the economy. Well, you know, ask people in LA how their economy is doing after the wildfires there. Did that save money?
Yeah.
No.
That's a good point. Yeah, to what sacrifice, right? Um,
Yes.
can you, for some folks who are local to BC, they might remember the pine beetle thing that you're talking about in a different context to some of the folks who aren't local.
Yeah.
Can you talk just a little bit about that experience from your perspective so that folks can have a little more context?
Well, BC has like BC and Alberta have vast pine forests, or we had vast pine forests. And the pine beetle is a beetle that kind of eats pine tree bark and kills pine trees. And it it's a cyclical thing where, every 7 years or so, there's like a, a population burst, and more trees get killed. But in the last population burst, because the winters were no longer as cold, the beetles weren't being killed off in the winter. So it was just like, instead of having this regular seasonal thing where the winter kills off the burst of pine beetles. It just continued and continued. And like literally mile after mile after mile after mile of hills and mountains were just turned red with like dead pine trees, the red dead pine needles just painted the hillsides red. And driving through there as I did, um it was the creepiest feeling, seeing all those beautiful trees just dead. And it was all across BC and Alberta. And the forests really had to be culled, and it has not yet fully recovered. It'll take a very long time.
Yeah, some of those trees were hundreds or thousands of years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, part of the life cycle of the beetle and coming back every 7 years and killing off trees is part of that. You know, the mulch goes to the ground, and it you know, the ecosystem, and it, like, you know, that's part of the cycle. It's supposed to do that, but it's not
Yes.
supposed to eliminate all the trees,
Yes.
because then the life cycle doesn't survive, and the other animals in the forest don't survive, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's not just the impact of, oh, poor us, we don't get to build any more houses because we don't have any tree. Like, that's not the thing. It's a whole
No.
ecosystem impact, right? Yeah. Okay, this is good context for some folks. So, because your art practice, okay, how would you define your art practice?
Well, I'm a sculptor. At the moment, I do what I call mixed media wood construction. I do a lot of wood carving of figures, but I combine the carved wood with plastic, junk metal, branches, bones that I find on the beach, all kinds of different, interesting, beautiful junk. And my artwork has been concerned with disability since the mid 80s. I have a learning disability and a psych diagnosis, and now I have kidney failure. And you know, my disability has affected me all my life. Like, I didn't grow up. I grew up, my father was a college professor, but it was not assumed that I would ever go to college because
Mm.
I was dumb. I had a learning disability. So, it's been part of my life all my life, and it's been part of my art practice. Is part of the impetus for me to get into doing art was when I was having a breakdown. Carving wood was a way that I could kind of like keep myself grounded from minute to minute. And so I became a very, very disciplined artist because it felt like it was the only thing that was keeping me from this really difficult place. So my artwork and disability have always been entwined.
Mm. Um, I sense when you say that, how almost how difficult it is to say that, but it sounds really beautiful when you say that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, I've been a big fan of your work for a long time, and I haven't even known you for that long. But I'd learned about you through my connection with Kickstart Disability and Jeff McMurtry, and um,
Yeah.
the documentary that they did a long time. Anyway, so I've known about your work for a long time, and I just think that it's fascinating and really beautiful, and it's
Thank you.
really, yeah, really unique, intricate way that you present things. So I say that we, you know, dive into this and we do some chit chat along the way, and break it down as we explore and experience Speak No Emergency. How do you feel about that?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. All right. So we have a series of Persimmon's works that are available in photographs at the moment. But just as a reminder to folks, if you're local here, that this is at the Richmond Art Gallery right now until the 23rd of March. So if you get a chance to go in person, some of these you can touch. And that's a lovely treat. All of them have audio description available. Persimmon mentioned before we hit record, before we invited folks into the room, we do a little tech check that for folks who end up being there on the last opening, which would be the 23rd of March, there is an opportunity to, on the first come, first serve basis, to take home a piece, should you want a piece of this work. So a little individual piece or whatever.
It's by donation, so and the donation starts at 0. So if 0 is what you can pay, 0 is what you pay. And if you feel like you can afford a bit more, that's always appreciated.
Yeah. That's great. And let's maybe throw out, Persimmon, the photo credits for tonight.
Yes, all these photos were taken by Della McCreary, who is a really good art photographer.
Awesome. We want to make sure that gets in here.
Yes.
Okay. So Rick, why don't you bring up our first photo, which is kind of a photograph of the gallery space, as sort of a wide shot of the gallery space with many of Persimmon's pieces here, which are, we're going to play a little audio description, but these pieces are quite large in scale, right? Persimmon, you were saying they're like 7 feet tall, roughly.
Yeah.
Boards that are about 7 feet tall, and they've all got little sculptures attached to them. Kind of the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just before we listen to the audio descriptions that people have a little bit more detail, why did you decide to put the sculptures, individual sculptures, on one board?
Well, I wanted to, like my previous, I wanted to portray groups of people responding to the climate crisis, either in resistance or trying to escape or in denial or wherever that particular grouping of people is, because I feel like action on climate change is something that has to be taken within a group, within a community. Change will come from joining together, and it doesn't really come from an individual decision not to use a plastic bag, even though that might be a very good individual decision. Real change is going to come from joining together and working to change this.
That makes total sense to me. Okay, well, why don't we have Rick play the audio description piece for this, and let's have a listen.
Speak No Emergency Introduction. From the gallery website. Exhibition Persimmon Blackbridge. Speak No Emergency. January 18th to March 23rd, 2025. In this stunning exhibition, Speak No Emergency, Persimmon Blackbridge urgently responds to the devastation and despair around climate change. Covering the gallery walls with dozens of hand-fashioned figures, she creates a desolate, desperate army who have come together in the face of rampant forest fires, polluted oceans, and climate denial. Blackbridge's raw, frenetic aesthetic integrates found wood, Barbie doll parts, bits of animal bone, scrap metal, and other recycled materials typically considered trash. Celebrated as a Canadian trailblazer in socially engaged art, Persimmon Blackbridge has made queer, feminist, and disability art from the late 70s until today. Together with writer Sheila Gilhooly, she created the 1980s exhibition, Still Sane, a then groundbreaking combination of sculpture and text, and one of the earliest examples of first-person narrative art in Canada, as well as a pioneering example of disability art. She was a member of Kiss and Tell Collective, whose installation Drawing the Line was a potent intervention against censorship in the feminist porn wars of the 1980s. In the 1990s, Blackbridge collaborated with 27 former residents of BC's large institutions for people with intellectual disabilities on the installation From the Inside Out, which was instrumental in winning reparations for former residents of the Woodlands Institution. From 2015 to 2020, her series Constructed Identities toured Ontario and BC, disrupting the social construction of tragic disability. Welcome to the Speak No Emergency series, where art and environmental consciousness converge. My name is Wanda Fitzgerald, and I'll be your audio guide throughout the exhibit. You may pause this recording at any time. This gallery exhibit showcases a powerful collection of doll-sized human figures, meticulously crafted from wood, metal, and other found materials. The figures appear to float weightlessly, a delicate reminder of humanity's fragility within the context of our changing world. These figures are carefully arranged to convey a sense of vulnerability and resilience. Some stand with their legs straight, while others are posed as seated forms, creating a visual metaphor for the precarious balance between stillness and movement. The arrangements, from the largest at the bottom to the smallest at the top, further emphasizes the delicate tension. In their abstraction, these figures reflect not just human form, but the ongoing environmental struggles we face. With subtle references to the human body, these works explore identity, transformation, and the deeply personal impact of global crisis. Through a soft interplay of shadow and light, the figures seem to be in constant motion, perhaps alluding to the urgent, continuous environmental changes around us. This exhibit invites reflection on the ways in which the human experience is intertwined with the planet's well-being, urging us to consider the consequences of environmental neglect and the unspoken emergency we all face.
Okay. That's cool. I like all of the subjectivity in there. I think maybe just to break it down a little bit, how many panels do you have in this exhibition, Persimmon? Do you know?
Yeah, there's 17 panels. And one of the panels is touchable, and it's a bit smaller. The rest of them are like 7 feet by 16 inches.
Right. Okay. And so each of these panels, they kind of remind me, even though they're skinnier, but they kind of remind me of like a door because they're so tall. And if you can imagine, on each of these panels are these figures that are roughly the size of a Barbie, but like some a little smaller, some a little bigger, right? Little doll-sized figures. But each of them are kind of carved with different materials. And they're attached to these boards in different positions, all with these different themes that you're talking about, and they're all quite striking. And so we're going to go through some of these images of the individual boards, and talk about them as we go through, because as you're walking through the gallery, that's what you would experience. And I think I read in your bio or in the description of the exhibition that there are more than 150 of these sculptures.
I think it's something like 140. Yeah.
It's incredible that you've done that many. It's pretty incredible. So I'm really excited.
I was obsessed.
Do you know how long it took you to make that many?
About 3 years.
I mean, it's incredible.
Thank you.
But you're right. A person who is just wanting to sit down and be focused, and as you say, it's a little bit like a therapy to go through. And I'm a beater, so I do the same thing. I will sit and I will bead, and before I know it, like 12 hours has gone by, and I'm like, what day is it? But I feel pretty good about it, you know. Haven't eaten all day, haven't used the bathroom, but I wouldn't know. I feel pretty good. So you can go down that hole pretty quickly. This next one that we're going to look at is called Heat Death. So we're going to have Rick bring up Heat Death. Okay, Rick. Let's get Rick to zoom in a little bit. This one's on a really dark painted background.
The background is actually rubber from
Oh.
inner tubes, like inner tire tubes, that's cut and nailed on, and the figures are made out of plexiglass that I cut and broke and stuff with my saw. I have a very fine little saw.
Mm-hmm.
So it references car culture, it references plastics, and it also references people dying from the heat, which is definitely something that we've experienced here in Vancouver.
Absolutely, with the heat domes and stuff.
Yes.
It,
And the fact that most of the people who died in the heat dome were poor, most of the people were older, most of the people had disabilities.
Mhm.
That's rarely mentioned, but climate change strikes the most vulnerable among us the first.
Mhm. That's right. And then we're the last to be spoken about.
Yes,
A disposable society in some cases.
yes.
Okay, let's have a listen to the official description.
Heat, death. Heat Death is a contemplative artwork that delves into the environmental and existential crisis of planetary overheating. Utilizing a minimalist palette and sharp contrasts, this piece reflects the oppressive nature of extreme heat and its irreversible consequences on life. The composition features ghostly, translucent figures floating over the dark, textured backdrop. Their forms are rigid and angular, suspended in an abstract void, evoking a sense of displacement and weightlessness. Each figure appears to be frozen mid-movement, their outlines fragmented, as though they are being erased by overwhelming unseen forces. The stark black background, made from overlapping layers of inner tube rubber, is fractured with faint curved lines that suggest the scorched surface of a parched earth or the rippling distortion of heat waves. This piece is layered with symbolic meaning. The plexiglass figures, fading into their surroundings, embody the fragility of life in the face of rising global temperatures. Their glass-like transparency hints at disappearance, perhaps extinction, underscoring the profound loss caused by unchecked environmental degradation. Heat Death serves as a stark reminder of humanity's position within the natural world, emphasizing the irreversible damage inflicted by climate change. Its somber tone and stark simplicity leave a lasting impression, urging the viewer to confront the urgency of ecological responsibility.
Okay. Rick, can you drag your zoom down so we can kind of get a bit of the whole image? Like zoom in on the bottom now? Yeah, just to see the bottom. There we go. As that's kind of a piece of your plexiglass body split into two, torso
Yeah.
and there's a really nice for me, I'm glad you told me this was rubber because I didn't know that, but now I can kind of see the scratchy striations in the rubber. Um, but there's this really cool thing that happens for me with my partial sight that the plexiglass kind of looks like ice.
Yeah.
And with my partial sight, there's this real interesting contrast there that it's kind of like frozen bits on a roadway, which is really kind of interesting to look at.
Yes. The where you can see it's more white is places where I took a very fine sandpaper and just like scuffed the surface so that part of it is very transparent and part of it is just
Uh-huh.
has this white ghostly surface. And I was thinking about how ice looks with that kind of air bubbles in it that
Yeah.
look all white, and then the part that's very clear.
When you're thinking about, because you do a lot of these body shapes, which is one of the things that I've loved about your work since the first time I saw this type of sculpture that you do. And the fact that the bodies they're not what mainstream society would call beautiful. I think they're beautiful, but they're never like equal in shape or size, or like the limbs aren't equal, or they're, you know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
not perfect shape. They're not symmetrical. They're not. Can you talk a little bit about the form in these bodies? It's like you don't put any pressure on yourself to say, okay, I'm cutting plexiglass, it has to be perfect, you know? And there's something really beautiful about that to me. Can you tell me what your artistic vision is behind that?
Well, a lot of what I'm doing is kind of like challenging societal notions of beauty, and I'm kind of portraying bodies that would be called broken, made out of materials that would be called broken, disposable, trash. And I try to make them really, really beautiful, full of strength, full of grace, but not in the traditional societal definition of beauty, but kind of trying to portray the strength and grace and beauty of our variously disabled bodies, and using the found objects, the objects that are considered like not perfect, because some of those objects, they're so beautiful. They're so beautiful. And so working with the plexiglass, it's like I work really hard to make it look the way I want it to look. But part of that is like, oh, I need some cracks in there in that bit. So how can I make the cracks in there? And oh, this is looking too kind of, it needs to float more. So I'm going to use a really rough saw on this part so that it just doesn't have a clean edge anymore, and stuff like that.
It's perfect in its imperfection.
Yeah.
I love hearing
Yeah.
that process, that it like you are a perfectionist in trying to make it imperfect in the way that you want it to be, you know? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I love that.
I worked on these plexiglass things so long, so much, because I really wanted them to have that kind of like horrible death look about them. And,
Hmm.
it was hard.
I don't imagine it's an easy material to work with.
No, it's a
Not at all. Yeah.
bloody stupid material.
Awesome. I'm ready to take a look at firefighters. How about you? This is this piece is my favorite. This is firefighters. Do you want to set this one up for us? This is, I think you told me earlier, this is the smallest piece that you have. So what's kind of the dimensions of this, if you can recall roughly?
It's kind of about 4 feet wide and maybe like 2 feet tall or something close to that.
And this one is on a painted board.
It's actually stained. It's a
Ah,
it's a water-based stain that so that the grain of the wood really shows through.
okay. And what, why this piece? What were you thinking of, thinking about when you were creating this one?
Well, some of the panels that are 7 feet tall are actually touchable, but Tangled Arts from Toronto partnered with Richmond Art Gallery on this on this show, and they really encouraged me to make a piece that was specifically the touchable piece. And so it was the last piece that I made, and I really wanted to do something that had like people joining together in determination and resistance, and making that one the touchable piece was that's what I wanted to portray, that kind of determination of people standing together and going, okay, this is enough, it's got to change.
This one's got six sculptures, six humanesque sculptures on it.
Yes.
Let's hear the description of it and see what that information gives us.
Firefighters. Firefighters is a vivid dance of form and flame, a sculptural symphony of 6 abstract human figures, poised against a luminous backdrop of fiery orange. The energy radiates from this piece, as though the figures themselves are emerging from the heart of the fire, each a unique embodiment of motion, emotion, and quiet resilience. The figures are carved from a harmonious interplay of materials, blending the warmth of wood with the starkness of metal, their interplay creating a rhythm that pulses with life. On the left, a seated figure stretches upward, arms raised in a gesture of yearning or triumph. Its sinewy limbs, carved from smooth dark wood, are balanced by a long curved waist made from a metallic tube, a juxtaposition of organic vitality and industrial strength. Next to it, a figure with a small smooth head stands resolutely, its chest open to reveal an intricate mechanical interior, a fragment of vulnerability exposed within the abstract. In the center, a tall pale figure anchors the composition. Its softly polished wood bears natural imperfections, knots and grains that speak of raw authenticity. An old-fashioned plastic hearing aid clasps its chest, a symbol of restraint or balance, while asymmetrical limbs offer a quiet strength inviting curiosity and contemplation. Further along, an angular form crafted from pale dark wood seems to shift between balance and motion. Its fragmented silhouette suggests a fusion between architecture and anatomy. Beside it stands a figure with flowing, sensual curves, carved from dark wood with one dark plastic doll's arm. More naturalistic than the others, it exudes grounded strength, its smooth surface radiating an organic, almost primal energy. The rightmost figure bursts forth, suspended as though in mid-leap. Its arms reach skyward, its layered wood body alive with tones of red and pink, echoing the flames of the backdrop. It's a moment frozen in time, a celebration of freedom, exaltation, and motion, drawing the viewer's eye upward in its spiritual ascent. Each figure casts shadows onto the fiery backdrop, adding depth and dimension to the composition. Together they create a dynamic interplay between stillness and movement, connection and individuality. The glowing background envelopes them, embodying both the warmth and intensity of the fire, a force that both fuels and consumes. Firefighters ignites themes of passion, transformation, and community. It is a testament to the resilience, to the beauty of imperfection, and to the power of creation to transcend boundaries of the tangible and ethereal. It presents a vision of working together, even in the face of devastating climate change.
You know, this is the power of how galleries light work.
I
I
know.
would never have noticed the shadows of the carvings on the backdrop until the description told me it was there. 'Cause it's so hard for me to pick that up. But once they mentioned it, I was like, oh, that's what that little, like, thing is that I think I see that I don't see. That's there. And now in my brain, I think to myself, I bet you that looks like flames against this back. Like I can kind of get this image of like flames in some way that like now I feel like people are dancing in the fire, this movement of fire.
Yeah.
It's totally my favorite persimmon, and I know you said that this one is going to be part of an auction. And now I'm like, how do I save every penny, even though we don't have pennies anymore? Whose pawn do I have to grease at the Richmond Art Gallery? Who do I have to, who do I have to put in a good word? Because this one's totally my favorite, especially since it's touchable. I should just
Yeah.
be like, listen, this is the accessible piece, so it should come to the blind.
So it's yours. Yeah, it should be. Well, I already promised it to the Richmond Art
Yeah.
Gallery, so I don't think I can go back on my word to them,
When
but
when do you think that they're going to be doing their auction?
I don't know. It'll be an online auction.
Hmm.
I'll I'll get them to let you know
Find
when it
out. Yeah.
happens.
We'll see. But I'm sure somebody with lots of money will come in and they'll outbid me. Story of my life. But
Yes. Well,
yeah,
that's why I wanted to have the pay what you want
yeah, for
thing,
the yeah,
because in an auction it is like the rich people will get what they want,
yeah.
and so with the exception of this one and another panel which they haven't chosen yet, they're all going to be um what you want. $1,
Yeah,
25 cents, $500, your
yeah,
choice.
yeah, yeah. Ah, all right. Well, yeah, this one's absolutely my favorite. Plus, I also really like the contrast of this too, especially in the center where because you've got the reddish colored background, and then you've got in the center you've got these like whitish colored sculptures that just sort of really pop out. And from a low vision perspective, that's really, really nice for me. I could see it over
Yeah.
a mantle piece or yeah. The older I get, the more I'm like, why don't I have any art? And it was probably because I didn't think that I could see it. And so why bother? But now I'm just like, I know a lot of arts people. Why don't I have any art? Um, okay, I digress because I could spend all the time in the world just on this piece, and other people are going to be like, Amy, come on, get on with it. So let's look at the next one, which is called Lytton Sunset. Lytton Sunset. They're all lovely. So this one we're going to zoom in a little bit on as well because, of course, it's 7 feet. And there are 3 sculptures in this one. So set this one up for us a little bit, Persimmon.
Well, I
That's
made this around the time that Lytton burned, and here on Hornby Island we were having um these brilliant bloody sunsets night after night from the fires on Vancouver Island.
mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to do something about the destruction of Lytton, and so I had it be both the charred black background and sunset red figures, as well as that kind of grayish wood figure. Um, just thinking about Lytton and what people there had to go through.
And is this another stain you used on the background?
Yeah, it is. It's actually a ink that's ink that has a slightly metallic surface to it. So I had a lot of ink and I painted that thing with a ton of ink, and then I rubbed a bit of graphite into it to
Oh.
emphasize the silveriness of the black, and then I put fixative on it so you don't get graphite on your hands if you touch it.
Mm-hmm.
So this piece is actually touchable as well.
Very cool. Let's have a listen to the official audio description track.
Light and Sunset. Charred and weathered, Light and Sunset stands as a haunting tribute to a world in crisis. Against the backdrop of a darkened wooden panel, human-like figures emerge, sculpted from driftwood, rusted metal, and salvaged remnants. Fragmented, yet enduring. These figures, both fragile and resilient, tell a story of loss and survival, their forms shaped by fire, erosion, and time. The title recalls Lytton, a town devastated by wildfires, evoking the relentless destruction of climate change. The figures, distorted and worn, mirror the remnants of a community reduced to ashes. The central form, its upper half carved from a twisted branch, extends outward as if reaching for something already lost. Below, another figure appears to collapse inward, its curved limbs bearing the weight of catastrophe. A third figure, assembled from industrial relics, suggests the fusion of humanity and machinery, our manufactured world now inseparable from the forces that threaten it. Like a sunset stained by smoke, this piece captures both beauty and devastation. It's a moment suspended in time when past and future intersect, urging us to reckon with the consequences of our inaction. In the interplay of light and shadow, Light and Sunset becomes not just a work of art, but a warning, one that flickers with the last light of what we stand to lose.
I remember that devastating forest fire in Lytton, and they're still not rebuilt. I don't know that they ever will be. In that town.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I was even watching a show about Hurricane Katrina. And what's that, like 20 years ago now? It's been a long time.
Jeez,
And
yeah.
it is not even close. Not even close to rebuild. There are some of the wards down there that have houses that are moldy and falling apart, and like it's just been abandoned. And there was a promise to those people to rebuild by governments, right? And nothing ever happened because there was no money down there, right? No money.
Yeah.
Just kind of like what you're talking about in terms of broken, disabled bodies, the sculptures of broken, disabled bodies made out of things that almost were like things that people didn't care about, you know? And these neighborhoods that people didn't care about because perhaps they had people living there that people didn't care about.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of theme that we see over and over and over again.
Yes.
Yeah. I hope when people see this kind of work when they go through the gallery, I hope it touches a nerve. I hope it sparks conversation. Does the Richmond Art Gallery share any feedback with you about what they're hearing people say about the experience when they come through? Or I know you've been to the exhibition a couple of times. Have you had any feedback from anybody who's experienced the work?
Well, I actually, I was just in Richmond for the installation, and I left before the opening because, well, because we are the main caretakers for my mother-in-law, and we couldn't leave her for that long. So the installation is the fun part. So I was there for the fun part. So I haven't directly gotten much feedback except for friends who have been, and that's been really nice. I should ask the folks at Richmond what they've been hearing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was Lytton Sunset. The next one we have is Wildfire. Wildfire. All right, Rick, let's do a little zooming in on this one. It's another one of those 7-foot boards, so you might have to zoom in top half and then bottom half again. This one's got a lot going on.
Yes. The wooden parts of the figures are all burned. So the blackness of them is from running my propane torch over them. So they have, like, if you get in really close, they have kind of like they're really charred, and then I sprayed them with fixative so that they still hold together. So there's doll parts and bones that I've rubbed graphite on to turn them black also, so that they also carry on the burned feeling. And there's bits of metal, but it's all like dark metal. So I perceive this one as people running or, wheeling away from a forest fire.
Yeah, there's a ton of movement in this. They're all very actively posed. And is this board, the 7-foot board, is that painted white?
It's actually painted a pale gray.
Pale gray, okay.
Yeah.
Rick, if you go down to the bottom of the board, because right now we're seeing the top and it's almost like they're climbing from the bottom to the top. If you zoom in on these two figures on the bottom, they seem to be the largest two. I wonder if we can get a really close up of what Persimmon was talking about. Just pick one, maybe, Rick, to see if we can get a look at the char. I don't know if we can. Yeah, you can kind of see that. It's like when you over barbecue your meat.
Yes. Very much like that.
Sorry, vegetarians and vegans out there, but yeah, I understand what you're getting at. And then how do you affix these to the boards?
You can see on the figure on the right, there's a rod that is screwed into the back of the figure, and it goes into the panel, and it has nuts on each side of the panel that hold it in very firmly to the panel, so that the rod is holding it out from the panel. And so the different figures are at different depths from each other.
Right.
But they're held really firmly, and that's also part of the floating look, is that they're not attached firmly to they're not up against the board, they're out from the board at different lengths of out from the board.
Rick, you can zoom out to its full length again. Does that make it delicate? So this would like not be one you can touch?
Yeah, it's very delicate.
Yeah. You wouldn't want to snap a leg off or something like that. Yeah.
And with the burning, all the wood is very fragile.
Right. Let's maybe take a listen of this audio description.
Wildfire. Wildfire is an evocative and dynamic artwork that explores the themes of environmental destruction and resilience. Composed of fragmented, expressive human figures crafted from metal and mounted on a stark vertical backdrop, the piece captures the raw chaos of a wildfire and its profound impact on both nature and humanity. The figures, suspended in various states of motion and distress, embody the unpredictable energy of fire, Some leap as though attempting to escape, others appear to fall or writhe in anguish, while a few seem to rise defiantly against unseen forces. Their jagged, deconstructed forms suggest fragility amid a life of catastrophe, mirroring the destructive power of fire as it reshapes the environment in its wake. The muted tones of the backdrop, juxtaposed with the dark metallic texture of the figures, evoke the ashen aftermath of the blaze. Subtle details, such as the protruding limbs and angular poses, create a sense of urgency and turbulence. The arrangement of the figures, scattered yet interconnected, symbolizes both individual and collective struggles in the face of ecological crisis. Wildfire serves as both a memorial to the lives disrupted by environmental disasters and a call to action, highlighting the interconnectedness of humanity and nature. Its raw industrial aesthetic reminds viewers of the tension between human intervention and the wild, untamable forces of the natural world.
Yeah.
So Wanda did the descriptions from photographs, and most of the figures are made out of wood or bone, not metal, but because the burnt surface is kind of shiny, I think she interpreted it as metal.
I see what you're saying. Was there opportunity for you to have a conversation with her
I
about the work?
did, and
Yeah.
we had a lot of back and forth. She was really awesome to work with.
Yeah.
But you know, every once in a while something gets missed. Mostly I would tell her, no, that's not metal, that's a Barbie doll arm or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But apparently we missed one.
I mean, what I like about the description is that she's adding in the curatorial stuff
Yeah.
that makes me feel like I'm a VIP in the room. Because the other folks that are coming in and viewing this stuff, they're not getting any of that. They got to
Yeah.
look at it and make up for themselves what they think is going on. And it's really nice to have that. It's not telling me what it is that I need to experience. It's offering me an offer, and I get to
Yeah.
go, oh, that's interesting. And how do I relate to that in this way? Or do I think that that's, do I agree with that or not? Like it's a way into a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's like a way into the artist's mind and what the artist is trying to say with this work. And I really like that, because sometimes if you just describe the pieces, I go, that's great. What does that mean? Right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that you miss when you don't get all the visuals, because sighted folks are looking at all these little details. Oh, that's a piece of bone. Oh, what did they do? They painted the fingernails on the Barbie doll, like all the little details that I don't get. The curatorial subjectivity stuff, I feel is so important. That's just me.
Yeah.
Some people don't want that stuff. I think that stuff is incredibly interesting, and why I like described tours where the describer has access to the artist to be able to add some of those layers in.
And she's so poetic sometimes, like that.
Is she based in Toronto?
Yeah, she's based in Toronto. Tangled Arts in
She's out of
Toronto
Toronto. Okay.
hired her to do these. She's worked with them before. She
Awesome.
also does at one point she told me she was so busy doing described audio for Hallmark Christmas movies.
Mm-hmm.
She said it
know
was
it.
much more fun to do this.
I know it well. You got time to breathe when you're doing this. When you're trying to fit stuff in between lines of dialogue, it's very different. I'm actually narrating dialogue right now for a series on Netflix called am I allowed to tell folks? Yeah, I can. Love on the Spectrum
Cool.
is I'm the audio description narrator, not for season 1, but for season 2, which is out, and for season 3. And you can tell how little time describers have to throw stuff in there, right?
Yes.
It's tough. So it's much more fun to, I think, be able to sit back and carve language and, other than just to shove little bits in there because that's all the time we get to do that. But it's fun to be on the recording end. Okay, I digress. This is about you, Persimmon. Okay, so this one was wildfire. And so I think we'll take a look now at Speak No. So let's take a look at Speak No, another long 7-foot panel in that same light gray color, correct?
Yes.
Rick, I'm going to get you to zoom in at the bottom. Let's start at the bottom. Because this one's a little bit different in terms of its sculpture. They're not full bodies, they're heads. So why is this one different in terms of it just being the heads of bodies instead of the whole bodies? What were you thinking about?
Well, I like to change things up, and I was thinking about, the expression see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, that kind of refers to people in denial, people pretending that things aren't going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to do something where, people's mouths are like sewn shut, or they have no mouth, or there's like a metallic thing screwed over their mouths. So in all of these, different things are interfering with people's ability to speak. So it's kind of about the kind of climate change denial that doesn't allow people to speak about what they know, what they see around them, to do with climate change. You're just supposed to shut up about that stuff.
Right. Rick, can you maybe zoom in a little closer to some folks with partial may be able to see some of the mouths that might be gagged in some kind of way? Okay. Can you do kind of a slow zoom up and up the wood and see what it, okay. I see what you're saying, Persimmon. So some of them have like bolts or what maybe look like staples over their mouths. And are these all carved out of wood? These heads?
Most of them are wood. That one that's kind of gray and red there is made out of metal. It's actually made out of printing plates that I just cut and formed into a face.
Wow.
That's a doll head, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
That little ghost one behind there is plexiglass.
More plexiglass, yeah.
Yes, that's a plastic skull head, and the silver one that's very hard to make out there, it's made out of like a very thin silvery metal. Oh, and up in the top right, that's a Ken doll head.
Huh.
His mouth is sewn shut.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. Thanks, Rick. You can put that back in its full form. It's 7-foot full form. And let's hear Wendy's audio description.
Speak No. Speak No is a haunting sculptural work featuring 20 abstract heads mounted on a gray plank with rods. The heads range in size from small and plum-like to large cantaloupe-sized. and are crafted from carved wood, metal, plexiglass, and altered doll components. Each head is a study in variation of individuality, unified by the central theme of silence and obstruction. Unlike the smooth, featureless faces seen in other works, the faces in Speak No are richly detailed and diverse. Some have carved eyes, others are marked by empty holes, and a few have added elements like electrical connectors or natural wood patterns that suggest eyes. The mouths, however, are universally blocked, stitched shut with wire or cord, concealed with metal plates or plexiglass, or deeply scored and scratched. One head lacks a mouth entirely. These obstructions, paired with the floating arrangement, evoke themes of silenced voices and suppressed expression. The materials themselves add depth and texture to the piece. The wood, ranging in color from deep red to golden cream and dark brown, features striking natural grains, bark inclusions, and imperfections that define faces. The heads are metallic, with one fabricated from printing plates, and another is made of plexiglass. Altered doll heads with their plastic exteriors drawn or carved add an eerie, otherworldly quality to the work. A closer look at specific heads reveals their individuality. A walnut head with a smooth, elongated neck has eyes formed from tiny drilled holes, and a mouth sewn shut with stark white nylon string. A golden brown walnut head features a rough-edged scrap of window screen obscuring most of its face, while another nearby has a metal fixture stapled across its saw-cut mouth. A cream-colored doll's head mounted on a stick-like neck has messy fiber hair scribbled over eyes and a graphite-marked mouth, reinforcing a sense of chaotic muting. A purple heartwood head with a long neck has its top sawn off, while its carved mouth is stitched closed with black wires. A final striking head is formed from old printing plates, bent and riveted into a three-dimensional shape. Its eyes are electrical connectors. Its torn metal mouth is rimmed with drilled holes and red wire, and its hair is represented by spiky triangles protruding from the surface. Through its intricate details and varied materials, Speak No captures the tension between expression and suppression, drawing the viewer into a contemplation of what it means to be silenced. Why might we be silenced by ourselves or those around us when talking about climate emergency?
It's very cool. Very cool. If that doesn't spark conversation, Persimmon, like I hope it does the opposite of what the images are, right? The images are to not speak. I hope it does the opposite for folks when they're in its presence. So the next one is see no, which you were talking about earlier, which is the hear no, speak no, see no. Although I didn't see. Do you have a hear no in your collection?
No, I don't.
I know you didn't send me photos of the entire collection, but or maybe you did. I don't know. But so we've got a speak no and a see no. So I imagine this is a little bit similar to what we experienced, but break it down for us before we listen to the description.
Yeah, it's similar to Speak No. Speak No is more about people being prevented from speaking what they see, speaking about climate change. We certainly see that in the US right now with climate change being stripped out of government websites and funding and everything. And so See No is about people being prevented from seeing climate change, being fed misinformation, being shown untrue images, and basically having their ability to see the climate change that's happening in front of them for what it is. So that's what it's kind of like the counterpoint of the different ways in which climate change is silenced and people are kept from understanding what's happening around them.
Rick, maybe we'll have you zoom in on some of these because these are heads again, right, Persimmon?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna make an assumption that perhaps in some way the eyes of these may not be visible in some way, just like in Speak No, the mouths were not.
Yes, this one has a really ratty broken strip of window screen across the eyes. The one to the right has some plastic fibers that I pulled off of the beach. And I used a lot of it in stuff about plastic in the ocean, and I also used it to this piece is made out of plexiglass. Actually, it's the end of a plexiglass paddle or something that I destroyed. And if you could move on up. This one has this one, the one to the right, is a profile in a really dark red wood, and it has this plastic netting tied around its eyes. It's like the kind of netting, if you grow peas or something, your peas can climb up the netting, but it's plastic and it's just kind of cut into a ragged strip.
Keep going, Rick.
This one is made out of copper. It's kind of like beaten into a slight oval shape, and then there's a different piece of copper that comes down from it for the neck, and it has it has red plastic netting. I think I got it from the packaging that some potatoes came in, you know, that kind of red
Yes.
thick netting. It has that netting across the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
The one to the right has black plastic window screen across the eyes, and it's all carved wood. It has a large red metal mouth, and the eye is made out of a piece of plastic that's just screwed into it. The one to the left is a piece of wood from the beach that it's just like entirely eaten out by sea worms. So it's all full of holes, and it has like very fine, delicate roots that were also washed up on the beach that cover where the eyes would be. And then this one is made out of a yellow cedar burl, so it's very mottled looking, and it has a kind of a pounded copper metal mouth, and it has green plastic fiber around the eyes, also found on the beach, also plastic polluting the beach. So the one to the left has just plain strips of plastic, of clear plastic, like from a plastic bag or something, that I also found on the beach. And the one to the left, it's yellow cedar with a bone nose, and it has, that really thin, fine cheesecloth. It has strips of that wrapped around the eyes. And then the one just on top of there, it is it's a piece of kind of reddish dark wood, and it has kind of like a kind of like a million tiny thin copper wires that are all kind of matted together, and that's across the eyes. And moving up, the one to the left is just like it's a Barbie doll that's been painted and kind of wrecked a bit, with silver, like gray window screen across it. And the one over to the right, it's a piece of purple heart wood that is just very rough. It was partly carved and partly just torn apart with a chisel, and it has no facial features whatsoever. And then this one at the top is it's walnut with a metal mouth, and it has more of that red plastic potato netting on it. And that's all of those pieces.
Awesome. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 or so heads.
Yes.
Yeah. Any significance in the number?
No, just what looked right.
Well, let's have a listen. I think I called her Wendy before, but it's Wanda, isn't it?
Wanda, yeah.
Wanda. Let's have a listen to Wanda's description.
See No. See No deepens the thematic exploration of human detachment from environmental collapse, building upon the narrative initiated by Speak No. Here, fragmented, distorted heads are arranged vertically, their varied materials and textures reflecting diverse responses, or refusals to confront ecological crisis. Each head crafted from wood and adorned with elements such as wire, fabric, or organic fragments, tells a story of evasion, blindness, or overwhelmed perception. The use of contrasting textures, smooth finishes, frayed edges, and raw and polished surfaces evokes the discord between humanity's constructed realities and the natural world's unyielding presence. The vertical arrangement of the piece evokes a moral ascent or descent. The heads at the top seem more eroded or lost, while those lower down retain a heavier, grounded presence. The structure invites viewers to consider a progressive loss of vision as we continue to turn away from the stark realities of climate change. In dialogue with Speak No, this piece critiques humanity's sensory disengagement. Together they form a compelling commentary on the dangers of ignoring environmental devastation. Where Speak No lamented the absence of voice, See No mourns the absence of clarity and vision, urging viewers to confront what lies ahead before it's too late.
So I have a question for you. I have doubts about this piece that I don't have about Speak No, and I'm not really sure why I don't have them about Speak No. I think I probably should, but I kind of wonder if it's using it's kind of like using lack of vision as a metaphor for lack of understanding. And I kind of wonder, is that like actually kind of offensive?
I suppose it depends who you ask, but if you follow a disability justice model, technically it would be a microaggression. Yeah, technically it would be an ableist microaggression. Not everybody aligns with disability justice in the blind community, or as you know, Persimmon, in any disability space. Not
Yeah.
everybody is in that world. Um, but yeah, usually, when we say things like, "Oh, you got a blind spot," or the
Yeah.
blind being the blind is like, well, you know, it's a bad thing because two blind people can't get anywhere. So that's the sentiment of the blind leading the blind means two blind people can't get anywhere. So
Right.
that's a bad thing. So
Yeah.
essentially that's, demeaning to blindness, which should be demeaning to blind people, that we're not capable of doing things for ourselves because we're blind. So that's kind of the root of the medical model and disability justice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Well, my apologies.
I'm not sure you need to overthink it, to be honest.
Well, no, but I do apologize because, it's stuff I started thinking about after I made the piece, and, I wish I had thought about it before I made the piece.
You you probably would.
And I will think about it going forward.
I would think you probably would get more pushback from the deaf community for a speak no than you would from the blind community for a see no. We're a little bit
Right.
more generous and forgiving with the like we don't ask people to change their vernacular around see you later or do you read books or that kind of thing. Yeah, you can ask them to read books or watch television. I don't have to say I listen to television or listen to books, but in the deaf community, as you know, with deaf culture, that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
I mean, thank you for asking the question. Um,
And thank you for answering. I
yeah,
appreciate it.
but you ask 100 different blind folks and you'll get 100 different answers probably.
Absolutely. But it still is like, you know, I don't need to be absolved of it or anything.
Mhm.
Just like I do want to be consistent with disability justice, and it's not, so I appreciate that.
I still think that I mean, this is part of the conversation too,
It is.
that it sparks. And I think that anything that sparks conversation is always a good thing. So there you go. We've had a conversation, and some people might be like, what are they talking about? What is disability justice? And maybe that prompts somebody to go look up what that is. Or some people might be like, yeah, you know what? It is what it is. Don't take it too seriously, right? There's all sorts of folks that do that are entering these conversations from all sorts of places. So,
Yeah.
is it overly offensive? I would say I've seen worse things that are overly offensive. So,
Yes, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, that's correct. Unfortunately. Okay, we've got two left. I can't believe we only have two left. But the next one is whose water is dying while mine is so sweet? I like this one too. I like them all.
This is a detail of a panel that's also 7 feet long, but it's a horizontal pattern, panel, and it has 3 figures on it all together. It's kind of hard to make out where the figures are, but it also has wire, kind of looks like barbed wire, but it's actually wire cut off of a fence, and it has strips of shiny silver metal, and the figures are made out of bones and driftwood and Barbie doll parts and metal and feathers, many things.
Mm.
So it's kind of like the effect of the whole thing is kind of like these figures are flowing in this river of jagged metal.
Right, because the metal kind of some of these metal pieces are like waves.
Yeah,
Yeah. And the figures, they're not actually in this photo, are they?
they are.
Oh, they are.
It's very hard to make them
Very
out.
good. Oh, oh, okay, I got one. I got one. They're horizontal and they're kind of, there's the one towards the bottom of the panel here and it's white, so it kind of sticks in the background. It's whitish,
Yeah,
but it's got its arms up. And then there's one at the top here against
yeah,
the third one. This is like, Where's Waldo?
I know. The third one is a really tiny one in the upper
Upper
left
left corner.
corner,
Yeah, okay.
and it's partly made out of wire, so it really
It
fades
blends in
into
with the
the
water.
background.
So are they clinging on to the wire? Like
No,
are they
they're in
caught in it?
front of they're in front of the wire, and they kind of, to me, they look like they're being carried along in the current of the river current of the wire flowing.
Okay.
So that relates to whose water. So they're in this water that's full of, you know, jagged, vicious metal. So this is definitely not a touchable piece. You would cut your hand so badly.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. Um, is this a piece that relates strongly for you? It feels to me like it's a piece that relates to land back and reconciliation, and can
Yes.
you speak a little bit to that?
Yes. Well, I was thinking about the way that climate change affects communities that are already been made vulnerable by society, and thinking about um, where I live here. I have just the most delicious water. It's so wonderful. It's like rainwater catchment, and
Mhm.
it's just, there's always lots of water, and it's really, really sweet water. And thinking about people, especially up north on reservations where um, the water is never drinkable,
They
or
still
they constantly are having boil water
right.
advisories.
Yeah.
Um, and thinking about how, as the climate gets drier, all of us are dealing with the lack of water. But for some of us, because the situation was already dire, um, having water dry up becomes an even bigger issue to have to deal with. So the drying climate is happening to all of us, but it's affecting certain communities way more than other communities. And Indigenous people are definitely among the communities that have um, done the least to cause climate change, and yet um, have to deal with its consequences, like way beyond what I have to deal with.
Right. Yeah, there's a disproportional impact
Yeah.
that's happening for sure. Let's hear Wanda's description on these.
Whose water is dying while mine is so sweet? Whose water is dying while mine is so sweet? is a poignant and visceral exploration of the unequal burden of environmental destruction. The work's stark horizontal composition, intersected by sharp barbed wire and flowing organic form, draws a sharp visual metaphor of division between those who consume water freely and those whose sources are dying, polluted, or denied. The barbed wire, taut and unrelenting, represents boundaries both physical and systemic, cutting across rivers, landscapes, and human lives. It is a reminder of how access to this life-sustaining resource is shaped by power and privilege. Behind and alongside the wire, the flowing forms of twisted wood and reflective metals suggest rivers in decline. The shimmering metal evokes contaminated water, reflecting light but void of life. The decayed wood speaks of nature's slow death as it dries and cracks under relentless pressure. The piece feels suspended in tension, as if caught in the moment before collapse. The pale textured background serves as a barren canvas, evoking parched lands, or the bleached residue left by evaporated water. The contrast between natural elements and industrial materials speaks to the conflict between the organic world and human interference. Whose water is dying forces us to confront the paradox. While some sip from abundance, others watch their lifelines disappear. It compels the viewer to ask uncomfortable questions about sustainability, responsibility, and the ethics of resource distribution. In its quiet, harrowing beauty, the piece stands as a memorial to the waters that sustain life and to those that are slipping away.
Oh, Persimmon. You're just making me ask so many questions. It's a good thing. It's a good thing, but I'm gonna have a hard time sleeping tonight.
No.
It is a good thing that this will stay with me for a long time. That's how I know that art has really impacted me, when I continue to think about it tomorrow and I tell people about it. That's how I know in my soul I've been impacted. So I thank you for that gift, because that's a real gift. Let's take a look at this last piece, which is I Can Forget the Burning World. I Can Forget the Burning World. When I first read the title of this, I thought, is there a typo in here? Because I thought it should read, I can't forget the burning world. But this is, I can forget the burning world.
For me, it's again looking at my relative privilege. Like, someone in Lytton probably can never forget the burning world. I can. And like, I don't want to just talk about, those stupid climate deniers over there. It's like the desire to turn away because of feeling so overwhelmed with fear and grief, the desire to forget the burning world, and the privilege of being able to forget the burning world instead of being so so inescapably surrounded by the burning world that you cannot forget it.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to I just wanted to talk about that, not because I feel guilty or anything, but just because, this is an exploration of my reaction, and part of my reaction to the burning world is a piece like Firefighters, and part of my reaction to the burning world is like, I can forget you,
Yeah.
but I don't want to forget you, but I am allowed to forget you. So that's why it's I can forget the burning world.
We've had a lot of privilege in Canada, in the US, possibly in Mexico, in North America in general, but certainly in Canada and the US, in that we've never experienced things like as big as World War One and World War Two, right? Where, you
Yeah.
know, you've had war on your doorstep so big that it leaves craters in the ground and has crumbled buildings that, you know, has devastated, you know, a space that has, you know, been around for hundreds or thousands of years, right? That kind of history. Because we're relatively new countries, you know, 250 years old and roughly, you know. So in terms of a historical thing, when you look at England, you know, when they have castles from 1400,
Yeah.
1300, 1100, right? And things of those nature that had been devastated. We don't have that same kind of, I don't know, historical, there's a word I'm looking for that I can't find, but it's just not in our historical, like DNA of our of being in North America necessarily. And so I get that sense. It's like I think about this too when I think about what's happening in terms of, you know, what the war in Afghanistan and those kind of things that
Yeah.
were part of my lifetime. And then I go to bed and I go, well, I have a safe place to sleep. You know, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I think to myself, that's tragic, but it's not happening on my back door. And, you know, children starving around the world is tragic, but it's not happening right now in this moment for me. Right.
Yeah.
And you feel guilty about it, but then you put your head down and you don't want to forget about it, because if we
Yeah.
collectively forget about it, that is also a problem.
Yeah.
Really easy,
Exactly.
really easy to do. This is when I do my disability workshops and training days. One of the things I talk about in relation to disability is kind of a similar thing. It's like, you know, when I first lost my sight, somebody close to me took my cane and was like, "Oh, this is kind of fun," la 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 la. And I was like, "Yeah, except at the end of the day, you know, you put your glasses back on and you go on with your life, and I don't get the privilege of doing that. I don't, you know, I don't get to open my eyes and go, okay, the game's over. You know, for me, this is my everyday typical. So for you, you know, you close your eyes and you walk down the walkway with a cane, and you're like, yeah, kind of cool. Well, yeah, that's not how I live my life, right? So you know, you did 15 seconds. I do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So it's not apples to apples, right? So it's the same kind of concept, which is people can forget about being disabled at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when we do disability training, that's why you got to be careful with simulations and things like that, because people, you know, do some dining in the dark stuff and or hearing loss simulations, and they go, "Oh, I know what it's like to be deaf," and you're like, "But you don't."
Yeah.
But you take those headphones off, you're back in the hearing world. So nope, you don't. You know, or I know what it's like to use a wheelchair, but you don't.
Yes.
You know, try going to the bathroom all the time doing that. So this is, I totally get what you're saying about this. It's really easy to be in a privileged space and say, I'll just put my head down and it'll all go away. And people who are living this in real time don't get to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this piece is another horizontal piece on that
Yes.
stained, kind of reddish stained background. Why
Yeah.
why is it horizontal? I could take
Um,
a guess, but
I'm not sure. It just um I kind of liked the figures floating on their sides. I don't have any clear-cut reason.
hmm.
It's just when I was putting it together, it was like, yeah, this is the way it goes.
Yeah. Because there's six sculptures on this one. My guess would have been that it had something to do with putting your head down at night.
Ah,
But
that makes sense. Yep.
um,
I like that. I'm going to adopt it.
it is yours, my friend. It is yours. Um, let's see what Wanda has to say about this one.
I can forget. The burning world. I can forget. The burning world speaks to the tension between awareness and denial in the face of environmental crisis. This horizontal piece, rendered on a vivid orange wooden backdrop, evokes the smoldering hues of a world on fire, both literal and metaphorical. The figures, carved with precision and mounted on the surface, appear suspended in states of action or repose, embodying humanity's complex relationship with a planet under threat. Each figure is distinct, their forms imbued with subtle details. Mechanical elements, fragmented shapes, raw textures that suggest both individuality and collective experience. Some figures seem resilient, their limbs stretched forward as if to confront the challenge ahead, while others lie motionless or altered, symbolizing detachment or surrender. The materiality of the wood, with its natural grains scorched and highlighted, reinforces the theme of environmental degradation, nature transformed and scarred by human impact. This artwork extends the environmental narrative present in Heat Life and Heat Death, delving deeper into the psychological and moral dimensions of climate change. It prompts viewers to reflect on the tension between action and inaction, hope and despair, memory and forgetting. The burning world it represents is not just a backdrop, but an active force shaping the figures, calling into question whether humanity will confront the crisis or retreat into willful ignorance. Through its tactile elements and fiery palette, I Can Forget the Burning World challenges us to engage with the urgency of the moment. It reminds us that forgetting may offer temporary solace, but at profound cost. A stark reflection on the choice that defines our shared future.
I can forget the burning world. That says a lot, Persimmon. It says a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Rick, I think you can take down this one. So, Persimmon, are you going to get a chance to come back to the mainland to check out the exhibition before it closes on the 23rd of March?
I probably won't. I have a lot of like neuropathic pain, and when I went there before, they had to rent me a hospital bed, and I had to bring my own mattress and all my pillows and
Oh my
stuff,
gosh. That's
make
a
it possible for me to like sleep with the neuropathy. So, but I really wanted to do the installation because I just love doing installations. So it was worth it to me. But it was a big drag, and a long trip like that is really hard on my neuropathy. So I I'm not gonna do it
yeah.
again. I had been thinking, oh, maybe I'll go for the last couple of days, but it's just too hard.
Yeah. I get that. I live with neuropathy too, so I know very
Oh,
well what that feels like in the body and then how many days it takes to recover from that
yeah,
once you're back at home. And it's not as if you can travel like that independently because you need people to help you to bring all of those things.
yes,
So it's it would like for me I think it would be one thing if I could just like snap my fingers and it all happens, but it's
absolutely.
different if you have to sort of rally a bunch of people to then it's your schedule
Yeah,
and their schedule and it takes a whole bunch of people to make it happen. So that gets to be that's a different story altogether.
matter transport, that's what we need.
Yeah,
Our beds and our bodies. Snap over
that's
there.
right. That's
Our
right.
only chair that we can actually sit in. Pop
Yeah.
over.
Quantum physics. We're
Yeah.
waiting for it. We're waiting for it. Um, I am going to get out to see this exhibition at least once. I probably will go a couple of times because I will go with different folks. Because I think that it's worth bringing people that I know in my life to experience this kind of work. So I will definitely be there a couple of times.
The Richmond Art Gallery is very close to a SkyTrain stop. If you go to their website, they have clear instructions for how to get there. So you don't have to take a million different buses to get there. It's right on the SkyTrain. Well, it's like
A short
it's
walk.
a short walk
Yeah,
from the SkyTrain station.
that's very convenient.
Yes.
Very convenient. Cool beans. What is next for you in terms of
Well,
art?
I actually am working on a series called Emma Goldman at the Frick Museum.
Okay.
Um, and it's kind of looking at some different historical figures who were active around the 1890s. And it's kind of humorous and also not humorous. And it's a way of looking at the 1890s was the last time period when there was like super income inequality, and right now is like the next it's like it's gone back to the super income inequality that was there in the 1890s. So there's different people, there's different historical figures in it, like the anarchist Emma Goldman, who was fighting against income inequality, and the robber baron Gilded Age guy Henry Clay Frick. So it's kind of funny, and it's kind of talks a lot about issues that are happening now, and in comparison to what was happening in the 1890s. And Emma Goldman, she's like a very problematic and very interesting figure. So it's a lot of fun doing stuff with her because she's kind of wild.
And this will be done through sculpture.
I've done for sculpture, yeah. So it's figures on plywood like this last series, but since it all takes place in the Frick Museum, which is Frick's mansion that got turned into an art gallery after his death, there's I have like little acrylic transfers of different paintings that are in the Frick Museum, and little frames around them, so that there's different paintings that, represent certain kinds of things. The paintings of the fancy ladies, the paintings of the military heroes, different paintings,
Mm-hmm.
as Emma Goldman carries on about whatever she's on about at the moment.
Very, very cool. How are you making these little mini paintings?
Well, acrylic transfer, you do um like you print out a copy of the artwork, and
Mm-hmm.
you put layer after layer after layer of clear acrylic medium on it, and then then you take the photo off of the back, but the ink stays embedded in the acrylic, so it's kind of ghostly, and
That's cool.
So all these white walls with these ghostly little paintings, and then mixed media wood construction figures doing different things, reacting to different things.
I just want to
A little story about Emma Goldman and her boyfriend Sasha and Henry Clay Frick. What happens to them?
I think you got to come back with some of these and do another almost live with us because I think that sounds fascinating. I have no idea where the Frick Museum is.
It's in New York City.
Oh, okay. Well, of course. There you go. So I won't be getting there anytime soon to see this one in person. But there are some folks in this space that live in New York, so they might be able to get there to see that. Are you planning to go to New York for the install?
No, it's not going to be at the Frick Museum. Though that
Oh,
would be very fun.
I gotcha.
Goldman at the Frick Museum is the title of it.
When
Um,
where will the installation of this work be?
it's going to be in the Comox Valley Art Gallery, so
Okay,
it's more local to me.
awesome.
But I could definitely send you
Yeah.
photos, and it has a lot of writing that goes with it too. So it has a really strong audio component.
Yeah, it sounds like a nice storytelling adventure through art.
It is a
Wow.
storytelling adventure,
Yeah,
yeah.
very
You
cool.
don't have to know anything about them. I tell you all about them.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, make sure you connect with us about that because I think
I
we
will.
could do a partnership with that. You and VocalEye and I, and we could make that work. Um,
Awesome.
this is great, Persimmon. I love having you in the space. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your work. Um,
Thank you.
I'm
I
so
really
excited.
appreciate it.
I want to just come over to Hornby and like spend a week with you and
That would be
have
awesome.
you be my mentor and teach me stuff because I think you're one of the coolest artists that I know of, honestly, truly and honestly. Um, and since the first time I saw your work, I was like, I just want to be in this person's space. So I hope I get an opportunity to come to Hornby and just spend some time with you in your workshop and walk on the beach and find stuff and make stuff.
That would be awesome.
It would be really, really awesome. So I just have to ask some people for some time off. I've actually never been to Hornby, so
Oh, it's very, very beautiful.
mhm. I've lived in Vancouver for 35 years and I've never been to Hornby. So
It's a long trip, but it's worth it.
yeah. Well, my friend, I would love to give you the rest of your night off because you deserve it. It's been a long night, a long day, and just thank you so much for joining us in this space. And I really want you to enjoy your evening.
Good night.
Good night, Persimmon. Thanks for coming to the VocalEye space.
VocalEye, vocaleye.ca. Special thanks to our funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, the British Columbia Arts Council, the Province of British Columbia, and the City of Vancouver.